Good afternoon. This is Jim Whitehead. I want to thank you for being here. This is Scary Stories Part 3 or Chapter 3. And these are scary stories that have happened over the years with my generating business. Things that we've done with so many variables. We deal with gas, we deal with transportation, we deal with yards, bushes, trees, you name it. There, we have to deal with. So again, this is Scary Stories for Generators, Chapter 3. Okay, getting into it. As you know, I always have some good friends out in the community that wait for me to come by to take care of their generator. They want to make sure they have all the food and it's nice and cold or warm, whichever way it would go. And basically, they want to have a lot of treats. So they're there and they're making sure I do a good job so they're ready to have their treats. Okay, what you see here, and this is when we're trying to decide and working with the customer as to what we actually are going to put on the generator. In some cases, the jobs we do, it can supply power for the whole home, or in some cases, it only can run some of the home. When we're in that second case, where we have to run only certain things, and this is very typical, this is the breaker schedule on the inside breaker panel. And you can see, how do you know for sure which one is which? And you get into, we have two levels of power breaker. One is 120 volts, and that basically runs TVs, microwaves, things like that. Then we have the 240 volts, and air conditioners need 240, pool pumps, water heaters, etc., etc. So we have to know, and yes, you can look at the breaker, right? You say, well, this is a 120 or this is a 240. So it isn't where you mistake the power level of that breaker. It's just you might not be sure what it's hooked to. So that's always something we have to deal with. In the pandemic, uh, this is what what is behind this actually is a old steel cased transfer switch. Back when I first started in the business in 2000, the end of 2005, everything that we installed, generators, transfer switches, they were made of steel. And most people would think Florida's warm. Why would we have any rusting issues? Well, what happens with our weather here, the winters are relatively, you know, comfortable and, low uh, pressure basically. And what happens is soon, and it's happening earlier and earlier every year since 2014, every summer's been hotter than the summer before. Our heat gets so high, it holds so much moisture that it just, anything that has any tendency to rust will rust. So we had to wait with the pandemic and the parts shortage. We had trouble getting some of the things we needed to replace like this. We normally wouldn't do this or leave it like, but we're just doing our best to ensure that they still have a generator, and hopefully as quickly as possible, we will get a new transfer switch. And by the way, all generator cases for Florida and transfer switches, they're all aluminum. Aluminum holds up very well. It doesn't corrode, with one exception if it's by the ocean. But we're doing pretty good. The unit that I put in 2019, a 48, looks like I just put it in. So that's good. Now, in my other previous scary stories, we were talking about ensuring that we crane in generators. You don't push them in. The case is aluminum, as I just mentioned, and the frame is steel. You can't push on that case. And then, if you had a cart or whatever you thought would be a cheaper way than using the crane, you basically would be pushing on an aluminum piece that you would probably bend it. Now, what happened here, I've used the same crane company, Precision Crane, for all the time I've been in the business, 18 years. We were going to crane in this 70 kW in 2012. and we were scheduled for a certain day. And Andrew, who is the owner operator of Precision Crane, called me, said, Jim, I'm going to be tied up that day. It was probably the next day, I mean, the day before, so on and so forth. He said, but I have another crane company that I'd like to send in, instead of one of my guys and one of their cranes. I reluctantly said, okay, because there's a fine line between making sure the job is safe and getting the job done. You got to really weigh balances. So I trusted them and said, okay. Well, I met the crane at the gate and I said, okay, we're taking a 70 kW, told him the weight, and we're going, I think it was 105 from the street. And he said, no problem, we're cool. So we go in, get to the home, and as soon as he gets there, and nothing has changed. Same size generator, same weight, same distance. He says, I can't do it. He said, well, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to have to drive up on the driveway. Now, we do that from time to time because what happens is if the distance is too far, and 105 feet is not a big deal, but if you're much longer than that, you've got to go, or the distance is long, you have to go to a larger crane. And when you go up to larger cranes, they get more expensive. And generally, a lot of them cannot carry the generator on the deck of the crane. So it has to be where it gets delivered in just a normal, dually truck, and the crane just takes the generator off the truck. So he said, I'm going to have to get up here. I'm going to have to go over the house, and that's meaning it's blind. He can't see. I'm on the other side. I can't see him. And for the first time in all my years, this actually scared me because it's coming over the roof. I didn't know this gentleman. I didn't trust him now. And I was like, this could be the very first time that everything, has it where we drop this generator on either the house or next to the house. Either way, it's not a good situation. So never again, never again. Now you're seeing, and I spoke about the transfer switch, and it had all rusted out because it was steel. This is a steel cased unit that was installed in approximately 2006. And it actually was not by any salt water, but it was by a little lake. You know how people have lakes in these developments and they think they get water from property, but just that water. And again, it wasn't salt, it was fresh water, but you could see, and that's where right there, a lot of the air gets pulled into the generator. Generators are sitting still. They have to bring a lot of air through the generator to cool and help go through the radiator to cool the coolant and also over the electronics in the generator. So this is one reason why this particular side really just gone downhill big time. Now, yes, can you replace cases? Yeah, we did it, but they're about $1,200, and it takes a while. So it's about an $1,800 job. And if the generator's old, I always would be honest with the customers because I make money doing the work, but you have to say, is it worth putting $1,800 into an older generator that basically isn't going to last that much longer anyway, from in the sense of the electronics and the mechanics. So that's not pretty. Now, this is talking about scary. This was, and I'd never seen it before, and I haven't seen it again. This was a cloud development and it wasn't where there was a hurricane coming or any expectation. It was just, what is this and what's going to happen? We just didn't know. This was taken from my truck as I'm driving, saying, maybe I need to buy this just in case. Who knows? Maybe it's aliens and they manufacture a cloud to hide. But the point was, it was really kind of scary. So anyway, that's one of the fun things that we had. Now, this is where we talk about thunderstorms, lightning, and there being surges in our electrical system. I've showed you pictures of what had happened when what that phenomena happened in reference to a thunderstorm and the transfer switch mechanisms and electrical connection. That's not as bad because there's not that much you have to replace, and you can see where the damage is. Now, what you're seeing here, this generator got hit. Now, what you're seeing is the worst part of it, in that it melted the covering and the wire. So you might say, no big deal. All I have to do is cut that little section out, splice wires, and we're good to go. Well, not, because you're seeing the very worst damage, but there was significant wire damage throughout the whole of what we call pigtail. And most of these units have two separate pigtails that have a lot of wire, a lot of connections, and they all have to be 100% right. So this is where I had to get the whole wiring harness and replace it and hope. And this has always been the tough part of the generator business. When you fix something and you're saying, okay, now it's time to start it. And you go to start it and you're praying, uh-oh, I hope that I get all the bad wiring out. I hope that, there's not more damage that I couldn't even guess or see. Good news is this unit started up. And now, again, I hate to say that I talk so much about explosions, but, these are things that you need to be aware of, and you have to make sure you do the job right. This is a propane truck, and you can see that it's not having a good day. And yes, they're pretty robust, but depending on what caused this to go over on its side, it very easily could have turned into, let's say there was a car accident, and unfortunately, due to where the car, let's say, hit the truck hit the car, we now potentially have a leaking explosive situation. So uh, gas is scary, and I'm a gas contractor, and my license is very, or my insurance for my license is very high, because they know that if I make a mistake, it might explode. So anyway, we always do everything right. All right, this is not a good picture, but what happened here, somebody picked up a grill tank. Probably they went to where you can, take your old 20-pounder and get one that's full. Anyway, they picked up the small tank and they put it in the back of the SUV. And problem is, it was leaking. In fact, the interesting fact that propane and natural gas does not, it's odorless gas if it's just coming out of the ground, being processed. They actually put a substance in the propane and the natural gas so that you will smell an odor when something's leaking. I don't know what these folks were doing, or I don't want to say smoking, but anyway, this tank was leaking in the back, and somebody lit a match to light a cigarette, and the vehicle blew up. And a lot of folks say, "Oh my heavens, I'm carrying propane, and is it dangerous?" I said, "Well, first of all, and most people don't think of this, we have cars everywhere, in garages, here, there, here, and gasoline is much more flammable than propane on a scale of 1 to 6. Gasoline is a 6, and propane is a 3. Natural gas is a 1. So, in technical terms, propane is half as explosive as gasoline, but it still explodes. if especially enough, collects and it seeks a level and it collects up. And if anything, a spark, switch, a match will basically cause it to explode. So I don't really know the outcome of this, and I hope folks didn't get hurt, but it sure looks like this vehicle had quite a flashbang, you might say, inside this. Now, we've spoken about getting the generator and craning it in from the vehicle that you bring it in, and how you want to make sure that the craning is right, that you've got the right size crane, and you've got the straps, and everything's the way it should be. This was somebody bringing in. This was not a cheap generator. They had it on the back of the truck, and they went under a bridge that was not high enough. Now, there wasn't, any obvious explosion because there's no gas, and you're prohibited by Department of Transportation. You cannot, and you're not supposed to carry, like if this was a tank that had gas with it or whatever, you don't and can't transport anything like this with, um, you know, with gas in it any distance or any distance at all. The biggest thing on this is just you're going to have to replace that case, and that's not cheap. You're probably looking at $3,000 in damage, and it's some of these things that shouldn't happen. Okay, we've come to the end. This is probably I could keep doing these, but we don't want anybody to get tired of what I'm trying to do. So this is chapter 3, and probably gives you a good idea of some of the things that do happen and how we handle them over the years. So thank you again. I really appreciate you being here. If you can, it'd be great if you could subscribe to the channel. I'm doing this full time now. I sold one of my generator businesses in December, and even though I'm moving from Davie, Florida to Naples, Florida in a couple of weeks, I started doing full-time content creation about 3 months ago, and I'll be documenting the move. And then when I get back set up again, I'll be in essence back on full content creation, which is a lot of fun. Thank you again. This is Jim Whitehead. Take care.